Argentina is the eighth largest country in the world and the second largest in Latin America. The country was discovered in 1516 by Juan Diaz de Solís and was soon colonized by Spain. 300 years later, in 1816, Argentina declared its independence. In 1913, Argentina was the world's 10th wealthiest nation per capita. Now it is the 54th. Today, Argentina is subdivided into 23 provinces and one autonomous city, Buenos Aires. Each have their own constitutions, but exist under a federal system. Some of the key periods in Argentina's recent political history are as follows. The infamous decade, from 1930 to 1943. This decade was characterized by electoral fraud, persecution of political opposition, generalized corruption, unfair economic trade deals, and censorship. The Peronist years, during which Vice President Juan Domingo Perón encouraged social justice, economic independence, and political sovereignty. The Dirty War, from 1974 to 1983, came about as a consequence of constant political unrest. During this war, corruption and violence reached a tipping point, resulting in what is now called a period of state terrorism. Power changes hands often in Argentina, and rarely do these changes of power come about smoothly. In 2001, the country had 5 different presidents in 10 days. Juan Carlos Di Stefano was chosen to represent Argentina in the 2015 Venice Biennale. Di Stefano was born in 1933 in Villa Chilena, Buenos Aires. In 1951, he graduated from the National School of Graphic Arts No. 9 and National School of Fine Arts Manuel Belgrano in Buenos Aires. Shortly after this, he met Griselda Gambaro, with whom he would spend the rest of his life. Gambaro, an artist in her own right, is one of Argentina's most prized poets and playwrights. Gambaro's work was highly political. At the height of the conflict during the Dirty War, Gambaro was exiled from Argentina and spent several years in Europe until returning. Gambaro's theater is concerned with the abuse of authority in human relationships. Rather than depicting realistic situations, her writing evokes the grotesque, where characters find themselves in absurd and exaggerated roles of subjugated and subjugator. Themes similar to this can also be found in Di Stefano's work. Di Stefano's artistic endeavors begin primarily with paint and print. After graduating, he begins work as a graphic consultant for a general company, Fabril Financiera. Di Stefano continues to gravitate toward more experimental artistic methods. He graduates from the School of Fine Arts as a drawing instructor and begins teaching at the National School of Graphic Arts, where he once attended. In the early 1960s, Di Stefano is rumored to have won a poster design contest that landed him a job at the Torquato di Tella Institute. The Di Tella Institute was a non-profit foundation organized in 1958 to commemorate the death of industrialist and arts patron Torquato di Tella. The institute focused on the promotion of Argentine culture, particularly modern and contemporary arts. Di Stefano headed the graphic design program until the institute's closing in 1970 due to the Dirty War. These photos act as links through which you can access more information on each of these topics. Torquato di Tella, the man to whom this institute was dedicated. La Menesunda, by Marta Minujin, a notable performance piece or happening that occurred at the institute, and La Universidad di Tella, the university that took place after the institute closed. This last link leads to the website of the art school's art program. In the mid-1960s, Di Stefano began focusing primarily on sculpture. He experimented sculpting with plastics and engaged with the emerging Latin American neo-figuration movement. Neo-figuration reenacts reality, or iconicity, in particular the human figure, but with the techniques of informality. It usually has a sense of social criticism. The movement was concerned with the analysis of image and structure, as well as political and social-centered themes. As the movement gained popularity and the Dirty War accelerated, this abstracted subversion of ideological values created a dangerous environment that Argentine artists had to work within. For many, expressing political opposition through this explicit and experimental art resulted in punishment or exile. De Stefano's utilization of experimental sculptural materials such as resin, enamel, polyester, and plastic reflected society's increasing dependence on materialism and consumption. These materials, paired with the sculptor's graphic and exaggerated subject matter, draw attention to the pitfalls and consequences of politicized consumer culture and its powerful grip on society. The following link is an incredible documentary on De Stefano's technique and process. To achieve these beautiful works of art, De Stefano goes through hours of laborious and tedious technique. It's easy to see his paint and print influence on these sculptures. Working as a graphic designer, De Stefano has a strong understanding of color relationships and composition. The following link is a video of his work at the Venice Biennale. And that one's my favorite. De Stefano's exhibit at the 2015 Venice Biennale was titled The Rebellion of Form. In it, he displays an array of sculptures sprawled out across part of the Arsenale. This year's Biennale, 2015, is one of the first in which many Latin American countries display their work alongside one another. I highly recommend taking the Google tour. It's easy to get a sense of how the sculptures were laid out in relation to one another and what kind of effect this layout had on the overall ambience of the exhibition. Clicking this photo will take you to the Google Tours page. This long L-shaped building is the Arsenale. The last stop on this tour, I would like to go back to Argentina, to the Parque de la Memoria, also known as Remembrance Park. This park, situated just outside of Buenos Aires, was created to memorialize the victims of the Dirty War, many of whom were young children and adults, political opposers whom the government silenced by making them disappear. The sculpture you see here was made by De Stefano to be placed in Memory Park. It is titled Por Gracia Recibida, also known as By Grace Received. This work was shown alongside many other sculptures, some of which are still standing. If you take your little man and drop him anywhere in the park, you can explore by foot. Here is the wall that contains many of the names of the disappeared. And as you can see, not all of the spots are taken up. And that represents those whose fates we don't know. Once you get a hang of it, it's really fun to click around and explore these sculptures, such as this one, which, if you get it in the right spot, it creates a face. Sometimes you teleport, but that's okay.